And we're just giving it a moment for the live stream to start up. I'm watching. Oh, there it goes. And welcome, everybody. My name is Abe Bonowitz. I'm the Executive Director of Death Penalty Action. And we're grateful to be in partnership tonight with Project Hope to Abolish the Death Penalty and folks involved in the campaign to stop the execution of Jeffery Lee, pictured over here above my shoulder. And we're going to learn a lot more about this case. Death Penalty Action is pleased and proud and honored to be able to host this event tonight. This is a safe space for people who oppose the death penalty. So if we have any shenanigans in the chat here in the Zoom audience or in any of the social media streams, there's no warning. We'll just be removing such people. We don't expect any of that, but you never know what you're going to get. With that, I also want to say, of course, that people that are in the program tonight are speaking for themselves or their own organization, unless they are staff or board members of Death Penalty Action. And with that, I want to invite each of our panelists to introduce themselves. And so we'll do that briefly, and then I'll turn it over to our communications coordinator, Allie Sullivan, to take the program further. We're grateful that you're with us. And again, if you do any kind of Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, and you want to go and find this live streaming on those channels and share it, then more people will be able to benefit from hearing this information tonight. So with that, let me welcome Esther Brown to introduce herself, and then Dawson Hicks from Project Hope to Abolish the Death Penalty, and then we'll hear from people on the legal team.
Good evening. My name is Esther Brown. I'm the Executive Director of Project Hope to Abolish the Death Penalty, a death row organization founded on death row, run by the men on death row. I happen to be on the outside. I just wanted briefly to say that in front of me, I have a message from J-Love, and it says, yes, we are family. So I'm here as family. I'm also here as Project Hope to Abolish the Death Penalty.
Hey everyone, I'm Dawson Hicks. I also work with Project Hope to Abolish the Death Penalty. I'm the special events coordinator, so all the in-person actions and vigils I help organize, petition deliveries, all that kind of thing, and just the online social media presence, stuff like that.
Thank you, Dawson. Let's turn it over to Laurel and Miriam from the legal team.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Laurel Haddix. I'm an attorney here in Montgomery, Alabama, and I have the pleasure of being a part of Mr. Lee's legal team.
And I'm Miriam Bankson, and I'm an investigator here in Alabama, and I also have the honor of working with Mr. Lee.
And then just one more introduction before we get going. We are grateful to have with us today Debbie, who is the filmmaker. So please introduce yourself, Debbie.
Hi, my name is Debbie Levin, and I made the film that you're about to screen.
Thank you. So we are just going to jump in real quick before we get to the screening with just a brief discussion about kind of where we are in this case, what's going on. So I'm going to turn it over to Laurel and Miriam to center us.
Thank you so much, Allie. Debbie has done an incredible job of capturing Mr. Lee's life, both before and after. But to sort of situate us, as Allie said, Mr. Lee has been on death row for 26 years. When he was originally convicted, his jury sentenced him to life in prison. But because of a practice that is now abolished in Alabama called judicial override, a single judge overrode that verdict and sentenced Mr. Lee to death. On June 11th of this past year, the Alabama Department of Corrections set Mr. Lee's execution date, and it wasn't until 9 p.m. that evening that the United States Supreme Court did not allow that execution to go forward, because for the first time in history, a federal district court found that the method of execution that the state was attempting to use, known as nitrogen hypoxia or nitrogen suffocation, violated the Eighth Amendment. Less than 24 hours after Mr. Lee's execution was stopped and did not go forward, Mr. Lee received another death warrant notifying him that the state would again seek his execution, this time by lethal injection. And so part of why we are gathered here today is Mr. Lee is set for his second execution on September 17th, again, despite the fact that his jury voted for a life sentence.
Thank you, Laurel. Did you want to add anything to that, Miriam?
No, she covered it all. Thank you.
Wonderful. So now we're going to turn it over to Debbie. I wanted to invite Debbie back up, not only to introduce the film, but to share how you became involved with this case and kind of your motivations that underlied it.
Well, my story starts in a completely different world. I come from network television. So I've been producing and directing network television for about 25 years. So I come from the reality TV and documentary world. And so after a long time of doing that, I was looking to take my skill set and put it into the world that I was personally passionate about, and that was criminal justice and social justice. I had no idea about Clemency films. And then came across a podcast where someone was talking about how they create Clemency films. And it was immediately what I needed to do. I just knew it. And so, quite honestly, I knew no one in this world. And I sent out cold emails, cold calls to public defenders' offices and things like that. And then I saw an article about Miriam and where she works and what she does. And I found her and reached out to her. And a few months later, the federal defenders of the Middle District of Alabama called me and said, we'd like to bring you on to do a clemency film for one of our clients, Jeffery Lee. And then I was off and running. It was my first one. Technically, it's still my first one. I have a few more that I'm working on, but this is the one and only that I've done. And I'll tell you, I've worked with a lot of celebrities in my line of work. I think I was most nervous before my first call with Jeffery. And it wasn't because of where he is or what he did. It was because I knew that we were going to have to talk about a lot of hard things. You know, I had seen all of the legal documents, I read his story, but I knew that there were stories there that weren't there. And so one of the things I did when I first spoke with him is I told him that that was going to happen, that we're going to talk a lot and we're going to talk about hard things. And he was remarkably willing to be vulnerable and honest about his fears and his regrets and his relationships. I mean, if I add up the amount of time that we talk, I mean, it's hundreds of hours, I would imagine. I mean, we would do the 15-minute increments that the prison allows. And then, you know, right before we'd get cut off, I'd say, can you call me back? And we'd keep doing that 4 or 5 times a day for multiple days a week. That, I think I met him a year ago. He and I still to this day talk. We text via a prison app. We talk about everything from music and books and film to his case, to his feelings about, you know, what life is like there and what's coming down the road. He really is an amazing human being. And I think you'll learn a lot about him in this. I think you'll learn a lot. I think he learned a lot by us talking about this and making this film together. It was very early on that I realized that he needed to narrate his own story. I think that's very rare to have someone that can tell their own story. He has spent a lot of time thinking about it and working on himself. And you'll see a lot of that. You know, and one other quick thing is, you know, while we're all here because we stand for the same outcome, right? And we're all supporting the same cause, that is not the intended audience for this film, right? The intended audience, and this is part of what I have to think about, is who are the decision makers? Who's going to decide if he is granted clemency? And it's not the people in this room for the most part, right? It's going to be the governor and the legislators, and it's a very conservative Republican group. So in choosing, while I'm telling Jeffrey's story, I also have to explain judicial override and, you know, all the other elements, but appeal to that conservative audience. And so I was deciding on who I wanted to interview that was not part of Jeffrey's circle, that didn't know him, that supported this, that might move the needle for the audience that we need to move the needle for. So last thing I'll say, because I could talk about Jeffrey forever, is I was really struck by how many different people, even conservatives, that wanted to go on camera and talk about why Jeffrey deserves clemency, why judicial override, when it was abolished in 2017, should have been made retroactive. And that is really the moral of this story. You know, Jeffrey worked very hard for 30 years to completely change his life. And you have to understand, on death row, there's no programs that help you do that. You have to do that on your own or not at all. And I think at the end of all of this, you know, understanding someone isn't the same as excusing them. Okay, and so I hope you learn a lot about Jeffrey, but I also hope you understand why judicial override really is the biggest travesty of this whole event that's about to take place. So I was asked if there's any like little nuggets to look out for. I didn't plant any eggs in this, but I did have an idea once I was asked that because Jeffrey and I have become such great friends. We were talking one day about music, and he told me one of his favorite bands was, and months later, I slid it into the film without him knowing. And when he screened it for the first time, he bawled his eyes out. And if this is the version that has the credits at the end, I'm not sure if it is or not. It's going to be that song at the end, so watch it through.
Thank you, Debbie. So I just wanted to let folks know that the film is 48 minutes long, and we will be back after the film is over.
Father God, we come this morning just to say thank you. Thank you for waking us up this morning, letting us see this new day. Father God, I thank you for my son Jeffery, who's in prison down there. And thank you for letting us go down there yesterday to see him and see how he's doing. He was doing good. Father God, I pray and hope that one day that he'll be able to come out of prison. Father God, these are little business in Jesus' name. Amen. Back when they would come, I worked for the state of Alabama. Operate equipment, drive big truck with this, whatever they tell me to do. And we 6 kids, it was It was tight, but we managed. We managed.
Growing up, we was poor. Over the summer breaks, we was working out in the fields. I think I was about 8, 9 years old. Till I was about 15 or 16. The people that had the farms, they would come around in the morning time, pick all the kids up, and would go and pick okra 5 days out of the week, sometimes on Saturdays.
You know, life was so different than we growing up in a house with no electricity. We didn't have running water either.
We didn't have a bathroom inside of the first 2 houses I remember living in. You had like an outhouse outside of the house. Inside the house overnight, we had like a bucket. It was called the pea pot.
The way we were raised, it was crazy. We would go to dumps. We would go to the local sanitation where they would dump everyone garbage. And we would go through the garbage and search for stuff that people done threw away, you know, toys out of the garbage. We used to get candy canes out of the garbage and then eat them.
In my house, you didn't really have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You knew you was going to eat while you was at school. During summer break, we did a lot of deer hunting, so that was enough to keep you from starving. It's like we survived that. I talk to some of my family now. It's like they just don't know that it's like they got it better, even though they still living in poverty. To me, it's better, which is kind of hard to say.
When you grow up in an impoverished environment, in abject poverty, and you are not getting sufficient nutrition, then that denies your brain and your body of the necessary nutrients that are needed for neural development. And there's a very rich history that document the impact of nutritional deprivation on development of the brain. It has been shown to impact IQ development, social development, neurocognitive development. It also can contribute to behavioral disorders such as impulse control, emotional self-regulation, and pervasive nutritional deprivation has those impacts on the brain. And when it's from childhood, some of those impairments can be permanent.
Growing up in a Lee household, it was just a dark place. He'd do some violent stuff.
Things at home wasn't real good. But people, jumped on me, fight me and stuff. He did a lot.
Looking at her with her face bruised up, lips bust, it was hard to deal with that.
Growing up in an abusive home with an abusive father, always abusing your mom, it take a toll on you.
With them seeing him doing me like that really hurt all 6 of them. But it hurt me too.
I think Jeff got the worst of the treatment because he would always say something and try to prevent it. And that would make my dad angry.
This particular evening, so I probably was, maybe 9. And I see my dad on top of my mom. He's choking her and he's punching in the face.
Jeff reached over his back and grabbed him and pulled him off. And when he turned around and seen who it was, my dad hit him in the face, put a mark in his face.
And he grabs her and throws her into this room. And so I tried to break him up, and I couldn't do nothing. I couldn't break him up. I couldn't stop him from beating her in the face. I couldn't stop him from choking her. And it's like I feel guilty in that moment because it's like I couldn't do nothing about that.
I admired the way he protected us, and my brother Jeff wouldn't intervene on countless time, my mom wouldn't be here. I know that for a fact.
Somebody who was born in just such a high-risk environment, your brain is just going to be wired differently. He experienced all the hallmarks of risk, and things that we know don't just result in making unfortunate decisions, but really can change the actual architecture of someone's brain. Early poverty, living in a household where there was violence, violence towards the mother, violence towards the children, and these are all highly significant risk factors. For violence perpetration, for substance use is a really big one, and for mental health problems.
When I was a kid, I would get headaches very often. And at nighttime, I would hear something that sounded like a woman's voice in a scream. And so I would go outside, and there wouldn't be nothing out there. I would talk to my parents and stuff about it. They would say, oh, you're hearing good spirits, you're hearing bad spirits. And that was something I believed until growing up and hearing them. That's something that's a part of my family. Not being able to have the ability to go really talk to someone professionally about it, you just like, oh, maybe they're right. And then you get to a place where you think about it. What if they was wrong? What if something was going on inside of my mind? The first time I actually huffed gasoline, I passed out. And when I woke up, it's like I felt like a calming feeling. So I started doing it a lot. I just wanted to escape the violence or escape the hearing the voices, but it would give me a headache. So I had to find something else. So I started drinking.
Child is still a developing brain. So inhalant abuse by somebody who's 23, who starts at 23 or 30, is very different than if you start when you're a child, when you're 8 or 10, because you are still going through critical developmental periods of brain growth. And in this case, this was not just an experimental thing that went bad. For an 8-year-old to start using a substance like that, whether it's an inhalant or something else, that in itself is telling you there's something very, very disturbed going on in their life.
At one point, I probably was early teens, struggling mentally. I was in my room, and I remember having a rope around my neck. There's something inside of me telling me to kill myself. And the way I had it tied, it didn't stay tied. And that scared me because I was blacked out.
This is a recipe for a psychiatric condition to develop and for it to worsen with time. They can be treated if they're recognized and there are interventions. If there's no interventions, it's going to lead to the development of even more maladaptive behaviors and more seeking out of ways to try to quiet the chaos that's going on inside your head.
I was my senior year of high school. And so on my way of going to school, coming around this deep curve in the road, and the front end of an 18-wheeler truck was just there. And my car, and it collided. I woke up in the back of an ambulance, and I couldn't remember my name. I don't know if I should have stayed in the hospital longer or what, but I know they released me that same day. Kept me in there long enough just to put stitches in my face and in my mouth.
After the accident, he was very different. It was very noticeable. When I used to go into his room, he would always have his room dark. Like the windows covered up. You couldn't even see in his room. He would complain about the sunlight and it's too bright and make his head hurt. And
he'd be in another world. Like he'll just drift off, and then I'll be like, Jeff. He'll be like, huh? Like his mind tend to go in calm.
It was like he would just want to be to himself. There'd be plenty of times I would come out in the wood pile. He would just be sitting on a piece of wood, just gazing at nothing.
He was kind of a different person because he would be real quiet, real quiet after then. He'll sit out here at night, man. Just stay out through that wood out through here, and look up through here at night, man. I think about he had some type of mental problem. That's what I'm thinking about. Didn't nobody never talk about it or think about it too much.
I remember seeing my car after the accident. The motor in the car, it was knocked up from under the hood. It was like in the passenger seat. And I know my face and head hit the steering wheel, and the steering wheel was bent. And it's like, I don't know how I survived that.
My cries to them to get him checked out after the accident, it went unheard. And they just let him deal with it on his own. But by me being with him behind the scenes, I was witnessing him go into a dark place.
For 3 years leading up to this crime, I was struggling. To me, that was the beginning of my life going in a totally different direction. It's like I really don't understand what happened, but I know something happened that day because I wasn't me no more.
It sounds like he most likely experienced a traumatic brain injury as a result of that. TBIs are now being studied as a very strong link with violence perpetration. The CTEs that we know now happen in like football players, right? Like those kind of traumatic injuries to the brain that unfortunately can only be diagnosed after death. We know those have been linked with perpetrating domestic violence, even murder.
So a mild traumatic brain injury is a serious injury. It takes weeks or months to recover from it. And most people in isolation recover well from them. But you have to consider context here. You have somebody who has a lifetime of, again, nutritional deprivation, growing up in an abusive, dangerous world, having substance abuse and inhalant abuse starting when he was a child. So all of these things that would have already had a negative effect on his developing nervous system and psychological well-being, those are the types of conditions that can make a mild traumatic brain injury persist and have a worse outcome.
So without some kind of intervention along the way, unfortunately, it's like this powder keg that leads to, the worst outcomes that can happen.
Lord have mercy.
When I first got arrested, I never once thought that I would try to say something different. The blame was on me because I was responsible for it. I think about that every day of what I could have done different. And that's where the shame for it come in, and of being capable of doing something like that, something I would never knew I was capable of doing. I think about the lives that was destroyed behind my actions every day.
He wasn't in his right state of mind. I know that for a fact. And I just feel like he was neglected of the actual medical attention that he needed after that accident that caused him to spiral and get to that point.
Hey, this kid's drug abuse began when he was an 8-year-old kid to escape a hellish world. And this was the perpetuation of that. So when you look at him as a 19-year-old, don't see him as a 19-year-old cocaine abuser. See him as this extension of this terrified 8-year-old who turned to drugs because it was the only way to cope with a terrible world. He's not the privileged 19-year-old who went off to school, started using cocaine with his buddies at the frat house, and went out and did something that ended up killing somebody. This is a kid whose life has been hellish since the day he was born, and has been defined by deprivation and horrible things going on in his life.
The time that Michael Jackson was appointed to be my lawyer, I maybe spoke to him maybe 2 to 3 times before I started trial. He had a year and 4 months before I went to trial. He never asked me about how I grew up.
Oh, I remember this case. I remember it very well. When I first saw Jeffrey, he was just sitting there staring one way, just looking one way, like he just sit there spaced off. Well, that first time I saw him, I was thinking like something was wrong with him. But then after the trial went on, it was just so clear. He had a mental problem. I think he had a serious mental problem. And then once they showed the video from the pawn shop, it was this clear something was wrong with him. You go in a place to rob it. You done shot the man and killed him. He got $900 in his shirt pocket. You down over him looking at him and looking at the money, but you don't touch it. And then the safe says, oh, he didn't touch it. Jury laying in the safe, and he never turned. And then he ran over to the cash register to get some money. He couldn't open the drawer. He picked it up and threw it. And when the cash register hit the floor, money just flew everywhere. And he was running from the money, and he never picked up none of the money. He had to go on, but he didn't really know what to do with it. He was, he was just waving it about. And he went to hide behind the glass counter, running around, ducking and hide. And then from there, he just ran out the pawn shop. He come there to rob the place, but he didn't do it. He didn't rob it. Somebody went in there and robbed a pawn shop and don't get nothing and everything right there. Something that wasn't right with that pictures. It was so clear that something was wrong with that guy. It was clear.
Did his attorney ever talk about the drug use from the age of 8?
No.
Did Jeffrey's attorney ever talk about the traumatic brain injury that he had?
That was never brought up in the courtroom. We didn't hear about that. His attorney never explained or told us about how he grew up the abuse he went through and all of that.
How did you hear about all of these things?
Well, I never heard about none of that until you told me about it. I never heard it during the trial. I think if the judge had heard all of this, maybe it would have made a difference to the judge if he had knew everything.
I thought what the jury decided, that's what it would be. I didn't know that the judge had the authority to erase what our verdict was and give his verdict. Because, you know, I feel like if the judge was going to make the decision anyway, there was no need for a jury. Well, that makes me feel like my service was not needed.
I didn't know nothing until I saw it in the newspaper that the judge had went behind us and gave him the death sentence. Cause it shook me when I heard it. I never heard that our being there was a recommendation. If he gonna make the last decision, what you need us there for?
I felt sad, and my heart has been with him. I want the verdict that we did as a jury to give him life without parole, because I do feel that he needs to be punished for the crime that he committed. But I don't want him put to death.
I think the right thing to do now, don't give him the death sentence. Give him the life in prison like we voted on. I hope she saved him.
If I find out one of my representatives did not make this retroactive and I knew about it, he would not get my vote again.
In this case, if you look at the judgment of the community at the time of sentencing of Jeff Lee, based on all the evidence presented at that trial and at that sentencing, 7 jurors decided against the death sentence and voted in favor of life without parole. 5 jurors would have voted for a death sentence. And if you add the judge to those 5, you have 6 people as representatives, treating the judge as also a representative of the community, though no better than each individual juror. As a layperson within that community, you have a vote 7-6 in favor of sparing his life, even taking the judge into account. And it was really only a feature of a law that is no longer in place that allowed that single vote to override so many others who were equal moral representatives of the community. And so what the judge is overriding or overrode in this case was the best representation, as recognized by all the courts, including the Supreme Court, by the jury, of community moral norms. And I think that's a clear signal that clemency, far from being in contradiction to community norms, would be an affirmation of them.
Alabama allowed something called judicial override, which meant that a jury could convict someone of capital murder, but the jury could recommend life without parole. However, in Alabama, a judge could come back in and say, no, we're going to execute them. Now, that practice was outlawed in 2017.
Well, Governor Kay Ivey did not make any public appearances today here at the Capitol, but she was very busy behind the scenes. She signed her first bill into law here on her first full day in office. This is a photo from her press secretary showing Governor Ivey signing Senate Bill 16, a law ending judicial override.
We have some 30 individuals that are on death row right now that are under that old law. Now, it seems to me that if the law was wrong now, it was wrong then, so those cases should be reviewed. What we're talking about is giving fair justice, and that's what it's really about.
Juries weren't just making these decisions, by the seat of their pants. There's a set of guidelines that they were following with mitigating factors and aggravating factors in which they were judging each convict on whether or not they were going to impose the death penalty. problem here, and I think it's important to note, the reason why it was changed is that we had a lot of issues of judges essentially doing this to prove at election time and in election years, and there were statistics to back this up, that judges were imposing the death penalty more so in election years than at any other time. You're basically killing people to get votes.
You said 720 mental health beds. Is that what you said?
Yes, sir.
And you also said one of the biggest medical providers in the state, correct?
We are the largest mental health provider in the state.
Doesn't that say something to you?
Absolutely.
The largest institutional space for those that are suffering from mental illnesses is prison.
Yes, sir. I would love for us to not have any if they were taken care of on the front end.
And he was on high medication during that time. It like that's when his sense came back. He felt like something had been lifted off of him.
It is unfortunate that the criminal justice system is one of the largest providers of mental health services, including basically incarcerated hospitalization in the country. Okay, and that's problematic. That said, even in that harsh environment of prison and death row, his neurocognitive profile looks better, and he's not abusing substances. That almost highlights how much he's been robbed of what his potential was by all the horrible things he had to grow up with.
It's kind of hard to say about being in prison, to be grateful to be in prison. But it kept me from the path that I was on and having the opportunity to realize that I needed help. When me and my brother got in trouble, that did something to my dad, and he changed his life. Stopped drinking, started treating my mom better, started back going to church.
I used to be a heavy drinker at one time, a heavy smoker. When they got in trouble, I hadn't done no more.
And I knew one day it was gonna have to stop. Either we were gonna separate, but he finally stopped it.
It's hard, and it still is. I think about it all the time.
That's something that's in the past. That's something that we forgave each other for. To me, that was a huge turning point in our relationship. With my son, he's part of why I wanted to change my life. I didn't want him to be ashamed of his dad. It's already enough to have to know that his dad actually did what I did. I needed to know how to talk to him, or needed to know how to write him letters.
My mom passed away when I was 8 years old. So I moved in with my dad's parents. People always tell me I'm like an old man, because all I know is like Wheel of Fortune, The Price is Right. I was like a kid that was like kind of a nerd. But when I moved with my grandparents, they encouraged me to go outdoors, start playing sports, and just have a more well-rounded personality, I would guess.
My parents, they raised him, and I thank God that those things that I seen, that he didn't get a chance to experience, the violence, the drinking, the abuse. It's hard sometimes, but it's a joy in other times, though.
So when I was a kid, before every morning I would go to school, he would call and he would pray with me on the way to the bus stop. Every day he would tell me the same Bible verse, Isaiah 54:17. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. So it would just be like, no matter what people think or what I'm going through, God has always got me. And it would just be a inspirational prayer, because every morning I would go to school, I always have that on my mind before I get on the bus.
My parents, they never saw me play any sports in high school. They never came to not one game. With my son, they had an opportunity to go see him play because he was all state, got a scholarship in football.
I felt like he was around a lot, to be honest. Like, during my football games, he would call my grandparents and be on the phone with them. And like, they would give him like play-by-play, like what's happening. Yeah, when I graduated, he was on the phone. He pretty much was on the phone for every big thing that happened. Senior night, he was always, he always was trying to be involved as much as he could. He was there, but he was always there in me in spirit. I always like heard his voice telling me to do right and steer me in the right direction.
I'm lost for words. Just the difference. Okay, I grew up in that house and I turned out like this. He grew up in a different environment. And I think that benefited him. He's the opposite of what I used to be. And I thank God for that. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things become new. And kind of challenged me to let the old things in me pass away. Just my way of thinking, my actions, my conduct. Getting off drugs, stop drinking, stop cursing. And that has opened up the doors in here for me.
I know Jeffery since 2019. So I get to see him on a weekly basis. Jeffery is just a regular guy that I would know on the street, that I would befriend and develop a relationship with. To be chosen as a leader in Kairos is an honorable position. It means that you're trustworthy, you're dependable, you're reliable, and that you can be counted on. You have guys in prison who excite riots. You have guys in prison who calm riots. Jeffery's a calmer, in the midst of those storms. And Jeffery's been one of the guys who counseled the other inmates during these critical times.
Jeffery was positioned as the lead coordinator, so he was the main inside contact. He's a great leader and a mentor. He's imparting and impacting the lives around him of what he's saying and doing. And he does it with such patience and with such kindness and tenderness. He's a joy.
I think he has an excellent character. I really do. Yes. And this is a man whose faith in death and his character, his smile, his gentleness, his genuineness speaks volumes. And I think that translates to other inmates, translates to the staff as well. You still need men in place inside of that facility who are calming voices, who are pillars, who are strong enough to calm the other men down. And Jeffery is definitely one of those guys. That's one of the reasons why he was chosen for leadership in Kairos.
If he were to be sanctioned and able to go into general population and out of death row, he would be an asset to the prison system. He has done a tremendous transformation. He's disciplined himself, reading the Word of God, and then implementing it into his own life. He's going to be a breath of fresh air.
There's one word that guides me in everything I do, everything, and that is reconciliation. When you think about somebody like Jeffrey, also think about what he's giving back in what he's offering. People who have learned how to become servant leaders, like Jeffrey, they make a tremendous impact because they support the chaplain, they support the church, and they support other people too. And anytime prisoners can add to that rather than detracting for it, they are a force multiplier in a prison.
When I look into records, that there's a neuropsychological evaluation in there that showed his neurocognitive functioning has recovered pretty well over time. And he's received medication, he's received more consistent nutrition, he's been described as an asset to others on the unit as being a model prisoner. What you're seeing is what could have happened if he had gotten the kind of treatment that he needed and he had not grown up in this horrible environment.
Jeffery Lee today is not who he was 28 years ago. I'm more caring, more honest, more open, and I live in a way that honors life now. I see life as being sacred. It means everything.
It would be unfortunate to delegitimate the signal of the death penalty as a sign of moral condemnation by continuing to execute people without that democratic imprimatur, which is exactly what's going to happen if these folks are executed.
There's definitely a direct line between conservative values and upholding the rule of law. It's something that conservatives deeply value. I believe that you can support the death penalty in principle or in practice, and at the same time be willing to say that not all execution should go forward. When you have an execution like Jeffrey's, where the integrity of the conviction really isn't there, where the will of the people, a jury of his peers, was undermined, that's alarming. That erodes, I think, trust in the justice system. It's not a sign of progress. And that's something that we should all care about, whether you're conservative or not.
Clemency would be appropriate in this case because the legislature has chosen 8 years ago to make the people's judgment final and capital sentencing. This case involves a situation that existed under prior law, and it involves a decision by a judge to go against the jury's judgment, the judgment on behalf of the people as a whole, by a majority that Jeff Lee should live. And this clemency decision is affirming that the local community harmed by a crime should be making that decision in a capital case. The victim's interests and the victim's family's interests do matter. They absolutely matter. And that simply is not as overriding and compelling a concern as having the importance of having the execution represent the judgment and moral judgment, most importantly, of the community as a whole. But it's not just taking and making a legislative decision that the legislature could have done. It's look at those mitigating circumstances and affirming, in my own judgment, that compassion is warranted here in this particular case. It's exercising compassion as the jury itself chose to do.
When this crime happened, I didn't know their names. I wanted to know because in my prayers, I wanted to include their names. I didn't know until I was arraigned, and And when they put me back in the cells, I got on my knees because I knew their names. It won't be a day for the rest of my life that I won't not think and pray for those families. Pray for the lives that was affected by my actions. And I know their names. I pray for the Ellis, the King, the Thompson family every day.
In the case of Jeffery Lee, the jury chose to sentence Jeffery to life in prison without parole. As you know, one person overrode that decision, and Alabama has even since abolished judicial override. Is there still the possibility left that the state might honor the jury's intent? Jeffery has spent over 25 years in a caged environment on death row and a fate far worse than death. Yet Jeffery has shown remorse, accepted responsibility, and has become a positive influence in prison and for his family. A death sentence won't restore what was lost, but life allows him to keep giving back. Certainly, the state must carry out justice for the victims and their families and the people of Alabama. But where was justice for Jeffery when he was growing up in poverty and neglect? While church and state may be separate, Jesus' teachings on mercy in the Sermon on the Mount show that justice and mercy don't have to be opposites. Is there a place where the justice already served and the mercy to come might join to reflect the best of Alabama's heart?
The rule of law is more than an outcome. It is a formal process that creates an opportunity for a jury to produce a just outcome. And a just outcome may not be the politically popular one.
My hope is that when I leave this office, it can be said that the state is in better shape than when I began. And I, too, will serve for the glory of God and the good of mankind.
Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine.
Everybody needs a second chance in life. You do wrong, sometimes you gotta pay for your wrong, and sometimes, God gonna give you another second chance if you do right.
He's been my fourth man in the fire, time after time. Born of his spirit, washed in his blood, and what he did for me on Calvary is more than enough.
Death row is not set up for a man to change, and I know the change when I see the change. He has changed.
He will never fail. I trust in God, my Savior, the one who will never fail. He will never fail.
Jeffery, I am so proud of you. I would tell him that.
If Jeff was sitting right here now, I could say I'm proud of the man that you became. I'm proud of you, very proud of you. Regardless of what happened, I'm still proud of you. You're my son. Everybody make mistakes, anybody. The best of the best make mistakes. I just like to say that I pray for the best for my son. I pray for the best of him.
Is there anything else that you want to add?
Yeah, in my closings, I want to say thank you. It takes people like you to change the system, and I appreciate what you're doing for us. And I just hope that you continue to help us out. Just do what you can.
Wow. That was my first time watching this film, and that was powerful. Thank you, Debbie. I'm really grateful that we had somebody with your skills and your heart and your passion to produce something like this, and I really do hope that it changes the hearts and minds of the right people. Give me, ooh, Laurel. I guess Laurel and Miriam are probably still with the students. So I think this is probably a question that I will gear towards Debbie and Esther. But could you share a little bit about how Jeffrey is doing at this time?
I can start. I know, Esther, you talk to him a lot too. It is remarkable how positive he is. I mean, you learned a little bit about his faith, and it is everything to him. And he believes that everything is in God's hands. I'll tell you a little behind the scenes. I hope he's okay with this. When he was supposed to be executed on June 11th, we were all there with him. And they kept coming up to him on that Thursday. I don't know, for those of you who aren't in Alabama, they execute people on Thursdays. And as the day went on, a correctional officer would come in and say, "Do you want your last meal?" And kept asking him that. "Do you want your last meal?" And he kept saying, "No, no, 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 no." And he's told me privately, he said, "The reason I said no is because they call it the last meal." And he said, "This isn't my last meal." And so he just has this very deep spirituality about him, and I think he's at peace. I will say, and he would be fine with me sharing this in a lot of our exchanges and conversations, there's fear that creeps in for sure, the what if, he says, but he's just, I tell him all the time, there's so much I can learn from you. I mean, his outlook on life in such a dark place is truly, truly remarkable. So, I don't know how he's doing, but that's how he tells me he's doing.
Thank you, Debbie. Esther, you're welcome to jump in. Can you hear me, Esther?
Yes.
She's off for clamped.
What can I say except exactly what J-Love just texted me. I think it was yesterday. We are family. We've known each other for 26 years. He has worked with Project Hope to abolish the death penalty. He joined it almost right away. When he came, he rose through the ranks. He's on the board. He's secretary treasurer. Everybody loves him. Maybe that's the most important part. And his faith, as you pointed out, is great. And so he's doing all right. Sometimes he's doing better than some of us, you know, and he lifts other people up by his faith. And no, he is all right. And the wonderful thing, too, they were just telling me he is writing, and he's writing a book. He's writing about his life. And I think that is a wonderful thing to do. As I told him, that's not just good for you, it's good for all of us who are going to read it, because he has a lot to share. He is respected, he is loved, he's exceptional, and maybe I could say awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. So I got into this work by writing to folks on death row, and I've known a lot of people over the last 5 years who have been executed, and I am always amazed at just the amount of courage that they show at this time. And like it's really insane to think about somebody who is potentially preparing for their death to be so full of hope and so full of encouragement, and all of their focus is just on continuing to do good with the people around them. And I mean, it's just amazing that somebody in Jeffrey's position has still that positive outlook. And we did have another question for you, Debbie. I know you had typed an answer, but I wanted to see if you could answer it live with us. Were you more or less working independently from the defense team, and or was it more or less equal parts collaboration with the defense team? I guess that's the same question.
I didn't quite get that, but you know, one thing I do feel it's important to say, that we dare to put somebody through that. And you know, the execution didn't happen at 6 o'clock. I think the US Supreme Court then did nothing. It was a couple of hours later. And he told me about it when he got back to his cell. He sat there all by himself, completely alone, didn't know what was going to happen. I don't think most people can imagine what that is like. And then when they did come, he wasn't quite sure what the news was going to be, but then you heard by the voice it was going to be all right. And I have to say, then when he got back to his cell, for 3 days, he did not come out of his cell. He was not all right. I mean, you know, we've already tried to kill him. After 3 days, I mean, the guys stopped by to see him, of course. But for 3 days, he didn't get out. And then a few days later, he told me, because we're in touch daily, his appetite returned. But, you know, we don't understand. They don't understand. And we have no right to do this to anybody. I don't care what he has done. We have no right to, I would say, murder people. That's what I call it. We can call it executed, but I refuse to do that. We have no right, you know, to have to go through that in of itself should mean that it's enough punishment. But that's Esther talking. And I've been around the death penalty for over 40 years, so, you know, I've seen people executed and being with them when they were. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Esther.
It's torture. It's torture. I see Laura is back and wanted to. Sorry, Alan, you're handling Q&A, but I'm here. So let me just say, Debbie, a lot of people don't know this. My background, my education's actually in photographic technology, and from back in the days of film and darkrooms and that sort of thing. And just from what I've seen of Clemency films over the years, this is just, in addition to really pulling things out, the editing, the lighting, the framing, all the technology parts of it, which most people just don't even see. That is what makes this even that much more powerful. Is that you bring your skill to this as a filmmaker, and it shows, and we're grateful. So I just wanted to put that on the table. So I'll stop now, and if you have any reaction to that, and then also Laurel is here, and we want to make sure that she can answer some of the questions out loud that she was answering in the chat as well.
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Laurel, for coming back. I did want to just loop back around. I guess Laurel might want to pop in too, but Debbie, could you talk more about the process with the defense team and how that collaboration went?
Sure. So like I said, this was my first Clemency film ever. So again, coming from the network television world, we're constantly communicating story and updates and all this stuff. And I think eventually Leslie, who's not here, who's Jeffrey's, what would you call him, Laurel, his attorney?
Jeffrey's primary attorney. She's been on
Primary.
Mr. Lee's case for 17 plus years.
Yeah, see, I'm still learning. Primary attorney. So I was emailing her constantly, and then I remember her saying, like, this all sounds great, but I'm getting lost in the sauce. And then I had this thought. I was like, why am I inundating them with like all my ideas and outlines and so, but it was a team effort. Obviously the legal stuff it was brand new to me. It's fascinating. There's this big dump at the beginning of these cases for me. And it's just like every single document that has ever been produced from the second the crime was committed to today. And I read everything, and I just love is a weird word, but I just get into it. I can't stop reading it. It's where I get my ideas from. I run my ideas by Leslie or the legal team. In terms of who I want to interview, they really kind of, we would agree, I'd say, we need some doctors, we need this, we need conservatives. She'd say, run with it. I'd say, here's who said yes, great. And then I think what happened is they just trusted me at some point. I think at some point it was like, just go with it. And yes, there's some legal elements that we had to talk about. I mean, again, this is not a Netflix documentary. This is intended for Governor Kay Ivey. So there was a lot of things that we had to talk about and had to work through and spell out. And that's obviously where I needed a lot of guidance with the legal stuff, but I learned a lot, and I could not have done it without the legal team. And then of course, at the end, if anybody here, other than Abraham, you have what's called rough cuts. And so as the edit goes on, I send it to the legal team. They're noting things, correcting misspellings, and suggesting that I put in certain things. Yeah, so because I didn't know what I was doing. And by the way, in terms of the real quick, going back to the technology of it all, because this is a very low budget project, all of these are, and they should be, these should not look like Netflix documentaries. I think that would be weird, to be honest with you. But with that being said, I shot this on my iPhone. So for anybody that feels like they want to, now I did have proper lighting, but for anybody who ever wants to get into this or wants to tell just somebody's story, you don't need a big expensive setup. You just need to know really how to tell a story, and you have to care.
Thank you, Debbie.
Sure.
We are grateful to be joined again by Laurel. We did have a question about the We the Jury campaign. How does this campaign for Jeffrey connect to the We the Jury campaign? And what should activists and organizers understand about navigating both of these efforts around judicial override in Alabama?
It's a great question. So I think there are 25 individuals today who are on Alabama's death row, even though their juries voted for them to have a life sentence. And so there's this really odd thing that doesn't feel like justice if the only thing that was changed about these 25 individuals' trials and convictions was the date that they happened, they would not be facing execution. And I think that's a really sobering thought for people of all political backgrounds and of all ideologies. And in fact, even for people who support the death penalty, it raises this very confusing question about the legitimacy of a sentence hanging on the year that somebody was sentenced and then judicial override happened. And so I think the connection here is that Mr. Lee is part of a larger story of systems and structures that allowed the voice of a single judge. And I should note that in Alabama, our judges are elected. And I don't think it would be a surprise to anyone that when studies were conducted about judicial override, there were significant increases in judges overriding life sentences to death during election years. And so you have this system that is vulnerable to political pressures, that really is not based on weighing the evidence, on looking at matters of what is the appropriate punishment, but individual actors who are looking to get reelected. And so Mr. Lee is just one of those individuals in this system. And so I think these campaigns connect because of that structure, because of that reality, but also because I think that just reflects who Mr. Lee is. If you have spent more than 5 minutes with Mr. Lee, he will talk about everything he has done, from his lawsuit challenging nitrogen hypoxia as a method of execution to the way he spends his day as both a barber and a leader and a prayer warrior at Holman, is about the other men on the row with him. And so for Mr. Lee, I think that part of this We the Jury campaign being connected is that we are honoring Mr. Lee's wishes, and that this isn't just about him. This is about his brothers and the other people who are fighting the same thing that he is. And so I really think that our hope is, as the video showed, in 2017, Governor Kay Ivey's very first bill was abolishing judicial override. But the job is not done yet. And it wouldn't just be done if she granted clemency to Mr. Lee or to any one or two of those other individuals. Justice requires all 25 of those people having the reinstatement of what their jury, the community of their peers, decided was the appropriate punishment. Allie, I saw a question in the chat that I would love to answer live if that's possible.
Go for it.
Abe, did you have something you wanted to add?
I just wanted to say that, Debbie just put a comment in that I think is really important. The average of judicial overrides in non-election years was 7%, and the average of judicial overrides in election years was 30%. And I think that says it all.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for highlighting that, Abe. So one of the questions we received was, do we understand why the original public defender pursued the defense he did? And I think in order to understand this question, we actually have to understand more about Alabama's capital defense system. So I see that we have a lot of people in the chat who are from other states. So for those who are not Alabamians, Alabama is one of the very few states in this country that does not have a statewide, state-funded public defense system. So in most states, if you cannot afford an attorney, there is a state-funded agency of criminal defense attorneys who are appointed to represent you, who have specialized training and are in an office that have resources to do that. In Alabama, that system doesn't exist. And so except for a handful of counties, there are no public defender offices, meaning that your attorney is appointed off of a list of appointed attorneys whose only qualification is having passed the Alabama bar. And so I have had cases as an attorney where a client is facing the ultimate punishment, the death penalty, and their attorney is a tax attorney or a divorce attorney. I've even had a case where that attorney has said on the record, this is my very first time in criminal court. And so automatically in Alabama, individuals are starting with a deficit of representation. And then when these attorneys are appointed, up until 1999, attorneys appointed on capital cases were being paid $40 an hour for in-court work and only $20 an hour for out-of-court work. And the out-of-court work was capped at $1,000. It's really unbelievable to think about. And even today, the current hourly rate of $70 an hour and the current cap that ranges between $1,000 and $7,500. I can tell you, as somebody who does this work pro bono, it's not even close to present an adequate defense for somebody. And so what are the attorneys who are taking these cases at these rates? Well, one, many of them, I would say, are not necessarily the cream of the crop in terms of who you would want to defend you. And it's devastating because, once again, justice is dependent on whether or not you can afford your own counsel. And I think most of us on this call can agree that a true measure of a justice system isn't how it treats the rich, how it treats the popular. It's how it treats the despised, the marginalized, and the poor. And so we have this counsel crisis in Alabama that leads to situations like Mr. Lee's attorney. And I would actually say Mr. Lee's attorney really didn't present a defense at all. He called no witnesses. He really focused on this issue of IQ, but didn't get into any of the trauma, any of the things that Mr. Lee had experienced his whole life. And something that I often tell, especially young people, is it's really incredible that we live in a world where as a child, you can be abused, you can be hungry, you can be all these things, and there's no legal recourse for you. You can't sue the state and say, you didn't take care of me when I was vulnerable, when I was a child. But the second that you turn 18 and you cause harm, even though harm has been caused to you, the state can throw its full weight behind you, or at you, I should say, without any consideration for the fact, I rarely have a client who has not experienced a level of trauma, a level of abuse, a level of neglect, which is truly unimaginable. And so, yeah, I think that that's how this original individual, Dallas County, which is home to Selma, Alabama, this is all connected to the history of Alabama, to the history of suppression of Black movements and Black jurors and other things in this space, still does not have a public defender's office today. Montgomery, where I live, which is the capital of Alabama, did not get a public defender's office until 2017. And so you really have a system that from the beginning is setting up these individuals for failure because they are not receiving adequate representation from people who don't have the training, don't have the resources to actually provide a legitimate defense.
I mean, all of us on this call recognize that these patterns are seen over and over, and it is not a coincidence that the people who end up on death row are some of the poorest of the poor, some of the most abused, the folks that have mental illness, intellectual disabilities, brain damage. That's like in most of the cases, and people are just not paying attention. But it's remarkable that even though this trial attorney did virtually nothing to defend Jeffrey, his jury, in spite of that, still saw life as the just punishment, not death. I mean, it's wild. So we did have another question, and I think it's probably best fitted for you, Laurel, about whether the governor would actually get an opportunity to see the film, or is it only seen by a clemency board? I know that there's stuff behind the scenes that you can't necessarily talk about, but is there something that you can share about that?
Absolutely. So again, Alabama is unique in ways that are not great for the people that we love who are behind bars. So in some states, there's a clemency board. You'll have a meeting, they will review the materials, and you will get a decision either way. In Alabama, the process is uniquely opaque. The power to grant clemency is just in the hands of the governor. And there was a question earlier about what clemency means. So let me just define that so everyone's on the same page. In Alabama, what clemency means for individuals on death row is that the governor can convert a death sentence to a life without parole sentence. So people are still going to, if Mr. Lee got granted clemency, he would still be spending his entire life in prison. He would just be living. And so that's what clemency means in the context of Alabama. It doesn't mean somebody will get out. It does not mean they will be released. It just means they will not be executed and their sentence will be converted to life without parole. But here in Alabama, it is solely in the discretion of our governor as to whether someone will get clemency. There's no formal process. There's no formal hearing. In the case of Sonny Burton, his execution was scheduled on a Thursday, and he did not find out that he had clemency until Tuesday evening. And so there's no way of knowing when or if clemency will be granted. I will say that both our legal team and this larger community, because this is truly a community effort. Each and every one of you who's on this call is now part of this community, has made sure that the film is available to the governor. Whether she has watched it, I am unsure, but we have created relationships with people, again, of all backgrounds, of all ideologies, who I know there are certain individuals who have specifically asked her to watch the film. And I know that there are individuals who have encouraged her and are continuing to encourage her to grant clemency, not just to Mr. Lee, but to all of the individuals on death row who are there as a result of judicial override. I will say every letter, every email, every call, every comment under her social media post moves the needle. And so I don't want anyone to feel like there isn't something you can do. There is something you can do. I'll post in the chat, we have the Life for Jeffery Lee website, and under the Take Action page, there is the address for the governor. I think we've talked to people who have said, what can I do that would help the most? A handwritten note asking for clemency for Jeffery Lee is the most powerful thing you can do. We've had people who have had, their Bible studies, their book clubs, their happy hour friends all sit together and spend 15 minutes writing those notes. A postage stamp is still under $1. And it's one of the most powerful things that you can do to support this work. And in that letter, be great if you said, listen, I watched this clemency film. Before you make your decision, you need to see this. You need to see this entire story. You need to see who Mr. Lee was and is and all the ways that he has been failed. So, we are moving in all of our channels to try to make sure that she has all the information in front of her, but we could use every single person on this call's help in ensuring that she hears it everywhere she goes.
Thank you, Laurel. We did have one more question for Debbie. Are there anybody kind of in your circle, Debbie, that have seen this film? Any celebrities that are amplifying the campaign yet? Is that something that's in the works? Could you just talk about that a little bit?
I mean, a lot of people have seen it. I won't say there's any celebrities that have agreed to repost it or anything like that. I think, to be honest with you, I didn't try that. I don't know. I'm constantly thinking about strategy with this and what helps and what hurts. I don't. I don't know if the people that I'm friends with who would be considered activists, if that would influence the powers that be. Do you know what I mean? I think, we're trying to get it around as much as we can, but I don't know that Bobby Flay reposting it is going to really move the needle for the governor. You know what I mean? No offense to Bobby Flay, but I will say one more thing too, that, I think all of us are moved by Jeffrey's story and what he has chosen to do with his life in prison. But that doesn't move the needle for everybody. And I'm not even talking about the decision makers. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people that we meet. I mean, if you look at some of the social media posts, I mean, there's a lot of hate. People think an eye for an eye, or, oh, he killed people, great, let's kill him, kind of thing. And telling people his history and where he is now does not move people, a lot of people sometimes. And it's not about him, it's just people's view on punishment. But where I find when I'm talking to people who feel that way is when I bring up judicial override, that starts to move things. I think sometimes the needle gets moved and people take action when they're angry about something. And I think instead of trying to convince someone to have empathy, which is not something you convince someone to do, what you can do is say, the jury voted for life without parole. They sat through the whole thing. There's a thing called, what is a death qualification, Laurel, I believe. So in Alabama, and I don't know if it's every death penalty state, but you cannot be picked to serve as a jury member in a capital murder case unless you say you are okay with sentencing someone to death if that's what you think. So everyone on his jury was able to sentence him to death, and they did it. And I think we need to get people pissed off about that. It was unconstitutional. The legislators today, their justification is, well, it was the law then, and we can't, rescind. Of course you can. You can do all of those things. The problem is they're still working on this tough on crime kind of mentality that lives in Alabama. I don't live in Alabama, so I get real angry when I hear about all this stuff, because all this stuff is still really new to me, But that's my recommendation. Do everything Laurel said, write the letters, post things, but also talk to your conservative friends. Maybe write some of your conservative, representatives and things like that. Get people pissed that there are now 25 people on death row who are scheduled to be executed whose juries voted for life. Boom. That should piss everyone off, even if you believe in the death penalty. And speaking about the We the Jury program, that's the next film that I'm working on. You would be amazed at how many cowboy hat, gun-toting conservatives want to be interviewed on camera as part of the film because they're pissed about judicial override. They don't want to hear about how these guys have changed, or they don't care about that stuff, which is sad. But so find those people in Alabama, find those people wherever you are, get people so angry that someone's about to be executed whose jury voted for life. See, I still get fired up about it. And I've been on this for years.
Rightfully so.
Yeah.
I just want to say that one of the beautiful things about this was, I mean, I was there outside the governor's mansion when we were waiting for an answer, and the frustration that we all had was that so much attention was on the method of execution, and nobody was talking about the actual issues in the case. So now we get that opportunity, and I think it's time for Dawson to tell us more about what opportunities do we have.
Yeah. Obviously, there's still time. We are at a moment where we're less than a month out from the scheduled execution, and there's going to be other film screenings. There's opportunity for you to share this with friends and family, get people to sign petitions, write the letters to the governor like we were talking about. And then ultimately, all this is going to lead up to the 15th. We're going to be in Montgomery. We're going to deliver these petitions. We're going to be speaking directly with the governor's office. And a big part of that is that whether or not we can convince Kay Ivey this is the right move, that's to be seen. But the ultimate goal is to create mass action. If enough people speak up, enough people are active and angry about this, then it forces change. And I would say within the past year, 2 years, we have seen historic change. We've seen clemency come down. We've seen Jeffery Lee, the first execution didn't go through. He's still alive to this day. And that is a testament not only to the amazing legal team that he has, but also the power of people, everyday people. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, because ultimately this kind of state violence can take. And we shouldn't be waiting for people to have an epiphany, a sudden consciousness. We have to force that kind of change. And that's what we try to do. And that's why we work directly with these people on death row. It's humanizing them. It's showing people that things can be different. And we learned a lot about Jeffery Lee's life, his upbringing. There's stuff in the film that I didn't even know about him before now. And it just goes to show that things can be different if we want them to be. Things don't have to be this way. The prison system does not need to be the biggest provider of mental health in the state. We can intervene in people's lives. And when we do that, we are able to stop crimes before it even happens. And that's the biggest message that we try to put out there, that abolition isn't just about taking away this one system of death. It's about building something up that preserves life. It is about building something that brings out the best in people. We don't have to always seek redemption. We can try and stop it before people get to that crisis point. So my big ask for everyone is to show up, come out to Montgomery if you're available. Let's come stand with us, march with us, be a part of this, because change is happening. The air is different. Things are moving. And in the short amount of time that I've been working with some of these people have been working on this a lot longer than I have, but there have been changes specifically in this space that I would never imagine I'd be able to see. So I think that's just a testament to the power of people and the power of organizing, and what happens when enough people are mad enough about something, or are passionate enough, or willing to take the extra steps, the 15 minutes to write a letter, whatever it is. It's like you said, every little bit counts, and everything moves the needle just a little bit. So show up, use your time, your body, your mind, your voice. All of it is valuable. No matter who you are, you have that. If you got blood in your veins, if you got breath in your lungs, you have a fight in you. And we're asking for people to bring that to us.
Absolutely, Dawson. Thank you so much. I did want to just let folks know. Hi, Miriam. I did want to just let folks know that there will be another one of these virtual screenings on Sunday, September 13th, same time, 6:30 p.m. Central. If you know people that are not able to go to any of the in-person ones and are available then, please invite them. We would also really encourage you all to share this recording with anybody else that you think needs to see this. You'll be able to view it on the Death Penalty Action Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and some other pages. So this is available. Please share it widely. And
It's
before we
there now.
close, yes, it's there now, and it'll stay up. But before we close things out, I just want to give everybody on this panel an opportunity to share any closing thoughts.
Miriam, how'd it go with the students?
It went really well. I think that they were shocked and appalled, but also very motivated. I was learning that I don't think many of them were from Alabama. And so I think people are always surprised to learn about kind of what goes on here. So it's good.
Those are social work students in Tish Rohr's class. And at what school?
Troy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all. Really glad that we could all be together and do this event today. And I sincerely hope that it really does make a dent in this effort, not just for Jeffrey, but for everybody also victimized by this practice. And I just hope that we can cancel our September 13th discussion and not have to see each other in Montgomery in a couple of weeks, and we can just go on and Jeffrey can just keep being Jeffrey and keep having an impact on the people around him, and still being a valued member of his family and all of the things. So just grateful for everybody who was with us today.
Any other closing thoughts before I close this out?
Just solidarity saves lives. It's possible. Even when it doesn't feel like it, it's entirely possible. We've seen it happen before, and we can absolutely see it again.
I'll just say that each and every person, what you can do is so much greater than you think. One of the joys of living in Montgomery, Alabama, is bearing witness to what a few courageous, incredible, ordinary, everyday people did that changed the entire world. And we can have that same impact. We can bring that same energy. So thank you to every single person who joined this call. And I hope that you know that your impact is beyond what you even realize.
Absolutely. Thank you, Laurel. So when we were all working on the Sonny Burton case, we had an Instagram live with So Informed and with somebody else who I'm forgetting. And we were asked like if we have hope. And I'm a pessimist, so sometimes it's hard to have hope, especially in situations like this when we've seen over and over things go the wrong way, no matter what issues are present. But I basically said that Governor Ivey has done it once before, she can do it again. I was saying that, but I don't think I actually really believed it. And then it happened. So she's done it twice. She can do it again, and she can do it 24 more times after that. There is hope.
Yes, Rocky Myers, Sonny Burton, and let's hope for J-Love. You know, and Laura, I loved what you just said about that, about using your love. And the fact is, folks, that that's what we have to do. You never know how far the ripples of love that you set in motion will reach. So we have to just keep trying. I'm reminded of the Melissa Lucio campaign. We stopped that execution, and our mantra then was watch the film. So we need to get people out there. Watch the film. Watch the film. That was our chant at all of our rallies. Watch the film. And that actually is because of the film that she's still alive, I believe. So we need to share the petitions. Catholic Mobilizing Network has a petition. Death Penalty Action has a petition. There's a petition on the webpage for lifeforjeffreylee.com. Sign them all. Share them all. You know, you can't have too many of them, and hopefully we'll all be able to combine them all for that petition delivery, which we've scheduled now for the 15th of September. Also, the We the Jury campaign, make sure that we're pushing that out. And I do want to just say that, you know, this opportunity for Governor Ivey to save 25 lives and actually enact what the retroactivity that the legislation that changed the law failed to do is her opportunity. She's one of 4 governors that are leaving office that have the opportunity to save lives. These clemency campaigns are also happening in California, in Kansas, and Ohio, and amazingly, believe it or not, Alabama. So, you know, those are some other things that are happening. And I also just want to say that Jeffery Lee's scheduled execution is one of now 7 in September. There's also executions scheduled, 3 of them in Florida, 2 in Texas, 1 in Tennessee, and that is a woman, and this one in Alabama. I think those are all of them. And it's possible that more would be scheduled. So there's a lot that's happening. You can find all the petitions at deathpenaltyaction.org. We're here tonight for Jeffery Lee, but he would be the first one to say, stop all executions. And Project Hope to Abolish the Death Penalty is about stopping all executions. So we're grateful to be together. Again, Debbie, Laurel, Miriam, Dawson, Allie, Esther, thanks for making this really, I think, quite a remarkable panel. It's one of the ones that I'm just honored to be on it with you all. And we've got our work to do. So I hope not to see you down there in Alabama, and if nothing else, then we will keep going until we can't go anymore.